What's shaking? Welcome back. I'm your host, Rick Jordan, and today we're going all in. Today's an interesting day because we're doing a cross post with an amazing podcast that's in my industry. Today I'm bringing on ChannelPro's Matt Whitlock and Rich Freeman. What's shaking, guys?
How are you, Rick? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's great to be on your show too.
Yeah, it's great to have you on our program as well. I think with this whole kind of cross collaboration show that we're doing, why don't we take a couple minutes and just kind of introduce each other to each other's audiences?
Yeah, that's cool, guys. I love that because our audiences are similar yet different.
In all the ways that matter, I hope.
For sure. Yeah, right on.
So, Rick, why don't you go ahead and go first? Why don't you tell the ChannelPro Weekly audience a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I am an MSP, the first and only publicly traded managed service provider within our space. And there's 143,000 of us across the United States. Everyone on my show knows this already. We've been talking about this for the last several months as we got to the point of our public offering. And there was a lot of interesting media attention a couple years ago. I'm sure you guys covered it when Datto went public, right? And I know you've covered Reach Out a little bit as well, but here's the difference. It's like this wasn't an exit for me or anything. It's like this is a mode of building. Now, because it's a roll-up of managed service providers, of MSPs, that's going to take place over the next 2 years, where we're acquiring about $50 million in top-line revenue as just phase one, or around 50 to 75 plus managed service providers. And still to this day, I'm the CEO. So this isn't, something like where it's I've sold and moved on, which we see a lot in our space, right? And they become coaches, the sellers become coaches and all these other things that I see. I'm still doing it. And I love helping MSPs just make more income because even out of 50, there's 143,000. I'm only going to acquire around 50 to 75 over the next 2 years. Yeah, but in that, I just want to help everybody else along the way, guys, whether that's happiness, cars, whatever it is, build a family, just to acquire more joy in what they have. Because I know what this is like going from being broke and nothing, starting an MSP to where I'm at right now. And I'll leave this with a question. Did you know still that the average managed service provider only takes home about $80,000 a year in personal income? Isn't that kind of crazy?
It is. Absolutely. And it kind of, it speaks to the fact that folks in our audience at ChannelPro definitely need the kind of expertise that we pass along from people like you, because there really is no reason why even a relatively small MSP, the owner of that company, shouldn't be doing better than that. And so for the benefit of your audience, I'll go ahead and introduce them to ChannelPro. So we are a publication 100% dedicated to IT providers and MSPs who serve small and mid-sized businesses. We went into business in 2007. Which, if you think back to what was happening in the economy at the time, was maybe not the perfect time to launch a business. And yet here we are in 2022, bigger and better than ever. We have a website, ChannelProNetwork.com. We do events in person and online, and you've been a part of some of those, Rick, even just within the last few weeks. So we really like to think of ourselves as the voice of the SMB-oriented channel, and ChannelPro Weekly, which is the podcast that we are co-broadcasting with right now, is a show that Matt and I host every week, and we discuss any and all things related to running an IT business. From sales and marketing to new products, new solution opportunities, new tools, new technologies, etc.
That's awesome. Rich, thanks, my man. Matt, I know that you and I always enjoy hanging out in the back right before I go on stage, right, at the ChannelPro events.
Well, so I've taken at our events, I've taken on a little bit more of a production role these days, although you'll catch me on stage every now and then doing stuff. So I'm part of one of our sessions in Dallas. But the rest of the time, I'm ChannelPro's online director. I kind of manage our online infrastructure. I handle a lot of our web stuff. I handle tech editorial, so I'm a part of the editorial team. I don't get to write quite as much as I used to, but you'll see my name in the magazine every now and then talking about technology and generally hardware kind of focus.
So we just saw each other, about a month and a half ago, right? And it was in Chicago, in my own hometown. And I've got to say that I was really, really impressed because there was probably, close to 200 people that were there. You know, there were attendees, for at least from what I could gather in the room, you know, about 20 tables of 10 people. I mean, that's easy math, right? That's 200 people. And it was incredible to see so many people in the room again. And I've been to other events like in Florida, you know, last year at Funnel Hacking Live, there were 3,000 people there, you know, but generally speaking, it's been slow for our industry from what I feel compared to the general entrepreneurial space, which is a lot of who's listening right now, you know, in the general entrepreneurial space. It's like these events have still continuously gone on during the past couple of years, anywhere they could. They've just moved to states that were open almost the whole time, you know, but it's different because you guys do regional stuff, right? What's it been like the past couple of years continuously to try to engage and build a community without the ability, like Los Angeles last year, right? I remember I was going to be there, I was speaking, and I remember that one was canceled just because it was like 2 weeks prior. There was more mandates that were placed on. I think it was vaccine requirements or something during that time. I don't remember what. I just remember that you guys made the choice to go all virtual or something, or canceled entirely. But how was that, trying to maintain and engage a community when a lot of stuff was out of your control?
Yeah, it's been an exciting 2 years, and we had all of these face-to-face events scheduled for the year, and we knew right away we were almost certainly not going to be able to do any of those. And so we had to learn a ton about hosting virtual events that kind of lived up to our quality standard on the fly. And Matt played an enormous role and continues to, but he had to figure out in a really short time, like the right set of tools and technologies and the production techniques to use to deliver ChannelPro grade quality online like that. And then last year, kind of, you know, to your point, everyone, including us, we went back by about mid-year. We started doing in-person events again.
I think it was your event. It was your event, right? It was Dallas, I think, last year was almost, in our industry anyways, it was like the first in-person one that came back out of all of the events in our space. Because I remember talking with other guys there like Rob Ray and Matt Solomon and discussing with them. I'm like, oh man, it's so good to be back. You know, and just seeing people in the room. And I remember that there was still, it was a little skittish, right? Because there might have been about 50 people there that were present in the audience at that one. But then there was like another 250 online. You know, so you guys pivoted extremely well that I saw. And that was just interesting to see just the excitement of everybody to be back there in person too. Yeah,
we were really early going back in 2020, knowing full well that we were going to do what was
I commend you guys
hybrid
for real to jump right back into it and be the pioneers. So how's the publication doing? You know, because is that what started, Rich, in 2007, or was it the events that started first?
No, it was absolutely the publication that started, and you know, we coming out of the gate, it was just a 12 times a year magazine that was available exclusively on paper. I barely remember what the website would have looked like back in 2007. I know that it just wasn't, you know, that wasn't core to the business, and it was a few years before we started doing events and so on, you know, as we kind of branched out into webinars and stuff like that over time. So it was a very different model back in 2007, and it's been kind of fascinating to watch the publishing industry evolve, and you know, and then we've had to evolve along with it. We still do a monthly magazine.
I love that. I just saw friends of mine actually on the cover of that for this last quarter, Brian and Mary Hamilton, and now she's hosting events too for clients. Right. And this is amazing. She just had her first like cybersecurity. I don't remember what she called it. Right. But she had, geez, at least from the videos I saw, like 75 people that were at these events. But that's the thing, is Brian and Mary had 75 prospects for business sitting in the room. And this is one of the things how this industry has changed and morphed into how you're supposed to sell nowadays too. You know, just like you guys lead with education at your events. Right? Because that's what it's supposed to be. The sponsors are there, and you see me go up on stage. I'm not selling when I go up on stage, right? I'm not trying to be like, hey, you know, come to the back of the room and I'm going to see if I can acquire you. You know, that's not it. It's like, I'm just here to help. I'm here to educate you on what the industry is doing. And I really appreciate your approach with that too. Now, just encourage some of the other sponsors to do the same. That's one of the things, because they're going to go a lot further, right? That works for you, and that's what isn't that, Rich, what the publication was set out to do originally? It was just to educate people in the channel.
Absolutely, the very original vision, and I was like the founding editor of the publication, and the idea was, there are all of these IT entrepreneurs out there. And, by and large, these are people who started out as a technician. They were working for somebody else. Somewhere along the line, they decided for one reason or another, I can do this at least as well as my boss can, and I want to give that a shot. And they went into business for themselves, despite the fact that almost none of them had any experience or any training. And just on the job, they're kind of learning how to sell and market and serve customers, and then eventually how to hire people and manage people and grow employees and keep the books. And just all the stuff that goes along with running a business. There was this whole population, like you were saying, 143,000 MSPs, but a huge population of people figuring it out on their own day by day. And so we thought that there was definitely a place out there for a magazine that would pull together information that these people could draw on to be more effective at what they were doing. And we also had this idea from the beginning that a lot of what we could do is connect peers to peers, that in addition to, providing guidance and information from a variety of sources that we might know, one of the best things that we could do is connect peers to one another so that they could ask questions of one another. The people, like you mentioned, Brian and Mary were recently on the cover of the magazine. The people on the cover of the magazine every month are folks who are sharing some experience, some best practice that helped them be more successful with other people like them so that they can apply it in their business as well. And that from the get-go has been the idea here is how do we help this community be more successful, and how do we help them help each other be more successful?
And that's how sales is these days. Even within the MSP space, but even beyond, is just having these sort of micro events to where you can educate people and you invite them for free, but this becomes your marketing expense, right? The invitations, and then also I don't even think they had sponsors when they did this. I know I don't when we do this, but you just feed people, right? You provide them a lunch or whatever it is, and they'll come out and they want to learn because it's a topic that makes sense to them.
Quite honestly, Rick, you are way, way more sophisticated than we are at ChannelPro about social media and kind of leveraging social media to spread the word and to grow the business and so on. I feel like there's an opportunity to get more sophisticated about some of these other venues so that once again, we're kind of meeting the audience where they want to meet us.
The consistency in the content is one of the biggest keys that I've found out, and even personally with the two of you, I'm assuming that was a question, right? By the way, this is, you're good with, from a social media perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to know more about how you use social media to grow your business and how that might apply to us and folks in our audience.
For sure. And we'll put this into kind of two buckets, because first, most MSPs are never going to do what I do when it comes to social media, right? If you take a look at Instagram, is by far my biggest platform. I have a little over 300,000 followers, but it's gotten a lot of attention. And even when I do large media like Bloomberg, or Newsmax or Fox in Washington, D.C. or CNBC, all of these large media, global media networks that I've been on, Reuters, which is ticker news in Australia, all these places I've been on have generated so much back traffic to Reach Out's website. It's just insane. Now, we measured about a month ago, and we're at 47%. So 47% of the SEO traffic that goes to Reach Out's website is people just searching my name. And I even saw too, I don't know if they're listening, but malware bites now, because there's so much that's around those that if you type Rick Jordan cybersecurity, there's a malware bites ad that comes up when you type that. So I know that malware, but this is brought to me by one of my board members. Malware bites is actually using my name to generate traffic to their website, which is mind blowing to me. That's the big bucket, right? And when it comes to personal brand too, it's because of this that the podcast is in so many countries, and at some point there will be probably a B2C play when it comes to cybersecurity. That's later on down the road. But as an MSP right now, you can start with just something, because Instagram, even though that's my biggest platform, people still go there, not necessarily B2B, but they will go there and look me up, potential clients, potential acquisitions, and look at my content, because Instagram is a place where they actually get to know you as a human being. They get to see, and that's how you should see that, because it's meant to be photos of your life. If you're taking travel, whatever. I put a lot of my most heartfelt content on Instagram. But then if you shift over, I don't do much with Facebook, by the way. I'm just throwing that out there, because Facebook is almost kind of like a dying platform. It's great for families to connect, for some groups and all those things, but I would never suggest to an MSP to put a lot of money into Facebook. Where I would say put money into to generate leads would be LinkedIn. Because LinkedIn is just absolutely incredible, because there's so much that you can do. I mean, I host events for MSPs on there right now. I just hosted one with IT Glue, and they were blown away because I sent, from my team's efforts, 250 registrants to this joint event that we had, to this virtual live event that we had, just because of the efforts that we put on LinkedIn. That's direct messages. Matt Solomon from Channel Program would know, formerly of Kaseya too, would understand this, because he's super active on LinkedIn. I launched a newsletter because I've been intentionally building my connections and followings on LinkedIn over the last year and a half. A year and a half ago, I had like 400 connections on LinkedIn. I never put much effort into it. It was always Instagram and podcasts and all this. When I started putting effort into there strategically, now I'm close to 12,000, which is bigger than what most have in our industry, right? And it's targeted too, because my target isn't customers right now on LinkedIn, but my target are MSPs, because I want to help them and then maybe potentially look at some synergies for acquisitions. I don't shy away from that. But you can do so much on LinkedIn, but you have to be active. You have to have, I mean, I know this sounds like stupidity talk, right? But you have to have an updated profile pic. I can't tell you how many times people come on to the show with guests, or I'm on their shows when I guest on podcasts, like, oh my God, you look exactly like your picture. And I scratch my head. I'm like, that's a thing? Like, people are photoshopping themselves and doing all this weird crap, or like a photo from 10 years ago is still their profile pic on these things. So if it's for business, do LinkedIn. But I guarantee you guys that people who you're trying to do business with as an MSP, if you're trying to gain clients from there, they're going to go to Instagram to see if you're there and see what type of a human being you are. That's where they connect with you personally, because people buy from people, not from a machine or a company.
So different content in those two different places, which is interesting. I assume it's more of a business conversation on LinkedIn and more about, letting you as a person shine through a little bit on Instagram to kind of develop some of that trustworthiness, essentially, that who you are as a human being.
Yeah, you got it.
Make it a little. It's got to make it a little easier, Rick, because your brand is also you. You are your brand, right? So it's got to make it a little bit. I don't want to say easier, but maybe a little easier on to use platforms like Instagram, where it's generally more of about a personal kind of thing, and LinkedIn, where it's much more business, because you're kind of both.
You are, yeah. For me, it's interesting, and for me, anybody who's lacking, this will probably echo Gary Vee, and the big personal brand guys too. But as I said, 47% of the traffic that goes to Reach Out's website is people searching for me, just Googling me. And if you type in Rick Jordan in Google, I take up the whole front page. And Rick Jordan's a pretty common name, and to the point now to where there's even a Google panel of me. They just give those to you when there's enough searches for you on the right side. We're trying to get it edited. It's kind of funny because somehow someone thinks I wrote some books about parrots or macaws at some point. I didn't, and I'm not 58 years old.
I actually had some questions about blue macaws that I was going to ask you, because I know that Google said you were an expert.
I know, right? I have to make that up. I'm apparently 58 years old too, instead of 42, according to Google. But the social links are right, on that panel that's over there. But yes, I hear what you're saying from there, but think about this for a second. If you go to LinkedIn, right, you're not necessarily connecting with a company that's there. People are still looking for real conversations. So if it's an MSP that goes out and has a sales call or any kind of phone call, even if it's in person, Zoom, whatever, with a new prospect, immediately go on and connect with that person at LinkedIn. then the next thing you want to do is send them a direct message, because you might not, some people are nervous, to ask for a cell phone number. For me, it's easy. It's actually when you're not nervous about it, anybody will just give it to you. I'm talking celebrities too. That's how I have good phone numbers. It's like, hey, when you connect with them like a real human, not like a fanboy or some freak, and you walk, it's like, for an MSP, I genuinely want to help you. I believe that I can help your business. Can you give me your cell phone number just so I can follow up with you next week when I have something put together for you? Notice how easy that was, how I said it. Right. And it makes it part of the natural conversation, but then immediately go and check out some of their content that they're putting up on LinkedIn, especially if it's a law firm or a CPA firm. I can almost guarantee you that they've been on this boat much longer than MSPs. This is something that's always boggled my brain a little bit too, is just the lack of content that a lot of MSPs will put out on any kind of social media, and maybe not even content, engagement. One of the best things to do, and this is how I gain so many connections, is you go out and you find people that you want to connect with, look at their posts, and then like the post after you read it and send them a DM and say, hey, you know what? I really enjoyed your latest post that you had on your profile. That was really cool. Looking forward to more content from you. Just a message like that after you like their post. Or go out and endorse them. Typically on LinkedIn, when you endorse somebody, they're going to endorse you back for something, because that's how LinkedIn works. You can endorse them, and there's like an automated function like, hey, can you endorse me for something too? And then it forms a connection that way. It's getting back to, it's the best possible way to do virtual handshakes that exist. And then you can dabble with some of the personal content, because you're right. If you go and looked at my LinkedIn, it's more, it's longer posts. It's more about the cybersecurity industry and MSPs as a whole. But then there is some sprinkled content that kind of cross-pollinates over from Instagram as well. Because while most will go and look for you elsewhere, not all of them do. But then they can still get little doses of who I am as a human. And they start to know, like, and trust me in that process, so that they're comfortable engaging with me through that direct message, through the DMs. And then you just ask them to join something that you're doing. This is how MSPs join my virtual events right now on LinkedIn. It's like, hey, I'm putting this on. Would this interest you? Like, coming up, it's the first Monday of every month. I've got a community call. This next one is, the wrong way to raise prices and pay your employees more during inflation. Does that interest you at all? Cool. Here's the link. Go to the LinkedIn event and just hop on. Oh yes, different content rich, as you said, but it's meant to be that way. Because it's a different type of audience. It's a business audience that exists on LinkedIn, but there's still people. You still want to pepper in some of that personal stuff.
Something I'm curious about. So you went from 400 to 12,000 on LinkedIn. I mean, was that a sort of gradual process where you came across posts and people who seemed relevant, and you reached out to them in the manner you were just describing there? Or are there techniques for finding and reaching out to people, a little bit more quickly than that you were using to make that jump?
Yeah, I don't use bots, so there could be ways to do it quicker, but you run the risk of getting banned from those kinds of things. This is, these are teams, and I have messages that are like that. So if at first it very much was me, and then I brought a team on, but it's exactly what I told you is what's done. Is I go out there and I find individuals I want to engage with, or I find MSPs. I see some content that they're posting. I like their content, and it's not just a click and running through the motions. Like, I will legit take a look at the content and see if I like it. I'm not going to like something that I don't like, and that's important too, is being transparent in this process, not to go that way. Because you figure that if somebody's posting something that resonates with you, your stuff and your personality is probably going to resonate with them. So you want to find those like people. You can have easier conversations. It's lower hanging fruit, or it could be a warmer lead in that process. And then it just takes time. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase. It's like, 30 years ago was the best time to plant a tree. The second best time is today. This does take time. I mean, to get this podcast in 50 countries, we're up to 260 something episodes published now, going 3.5 years. I had, like 11 downloads in the very first episode, compared to the 79,000 that it exists today. So it's just, it takes time to build this momentum. There's no real way to shortcut that in anything you do in building a business with the exception of putting in more intention and more energy and focus onto that. Because wherever you place energy and focus grows.
I love what you said about staying genuine, though. People can really see through when people are being fake or going through motions and, just kind of liking things randomly. Like, it's so obvious when people do that. And I think that's a key to making actually genuine, valuable connections long term, is to stay genuine and true to yourself.
For sure. Absolutely. And just like, that's a good amount of followers for LinkedIn or Instagram. I've got a lot of followers. Guys, I'm still in my DMs personally. When I stand on stage and I say, hey, text me at this number, it's a platform called Community, which is Gary Vee's and Ashton Kutcher's platform in order to engage with the community via text messaging, but it's still on my phone. I'm still the one that's in the text messages, that's in the DMs, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, wherever it is, because I want people to know that it's actually me. There may be some times so where a team member could see that and get information back to them. I'll be transparent about that. I have a marketing team. I have a dedicated team to LinkedIn. I have a dedicated team to Instagram. I put a lot of intention and energy and focus into these things because it's just how I chose to grow my business. But any MSP can do this. And what's more so is that every MSP should do this, at least at some level.
Speak about that a little bit, because I worry that there might be some people listening or watching right now who are thinking, well, I don't have the time, to invest as deeply as Rick is. And for somebody who wants to begin leveraging the power of social media for business growth purposes, how much investment, how much time should they expect to have to invest in order to do this at a decent level?
If you want to do it where it's consistent, and when I say consistent, I mean a post a day, which you're thinking, oh God, that's 30 a month. There's a couple things about every social media platform that's important, and that has to do with consistency. So whatever you decide to do, if it's a post a day, I wouldn't suggest any less than a post every 3 days, which would be about 10 posts a month. But when you post consistently, the algorithm starts to like you more, because it knows that it can count on you to display your content to other people. It's almost like it's just waiting for you to continuously feed the machine. When you go off rhythm, even like posting too much or posting too little than what you usually do, then it kind of messes it up a little bit. If it's 10 posts a month or 30 posts a month, it really only takes about a day to generate that amount of content if you're really intentional to it. For me, I'm in a studio right now, right? This is like a content producing machine. It's once a month that I'll do podcasts where I have 5 or 6 guests on and I batch them all in one day, which generates 6 hours worth of content that can generate literally about 50 clips to go into social media. But then I have a copywriter that will take little bits of those things and actually start to write some articles and things for LinkedIn for me based upon literally everything that I said. So most of the phrasing and everything is mine originally to begin with. Now, while I have a team, any individual, even if it's like a one-man band MSP, you can sit down for a half a day and come up with at least 10 posts for that month. Any photos you have, because some of the best photos that resonate with me on Instagram are photos of me and my kids. It's relatable, it's family, and then just write something. Like, when the shooting happened, this was a pivot on my team's part, but I had the photos there already because I try to capture this stuff all the time to where it's like, man, these kids in the school were shot today. And the post that I wanted to go up was about my kids, being like, I'm holding them tighter today. And it shows the human side of really who you are. And this is stuff that can go on LinkedIn, guys, and that should go on LinkedIn. Because it shows you way beyond a cybersecurity professional, way beyond an IT management professional. It shows you as a human being, because I bet you most of the people we're trying to serve also have kids. And then that forms a common connection. So if you put that up there on LinkedIn, it's like, man, tragic news today. Today I'm holding my kids a little tighter. Don't take life for granted. Don't take the years you have with your kids for granted, because today is the only day that you know that you have promise with them. And it became a viral post. But it's my heart. And that's why it became a viral post.
I think some MSPs might have some worry about getting personal. What are how do you manage some of the risks about putting maybe too much out there where it might backfire?
And there's I walk and dance this line here and there. If you're going to get into the realm of politics that's something you have to navigate very, very carefully. Like for example, I'll go on, it was last year, I go on Newsmax and I was talking about the Instagram algorithm, actually, just like we're talking today. And it became about teenage body shaming for teenage girls. And because Newsmax typically leans a little bit to the right, they start pushing me. It was Bob Sellers was the anchor, starts pushing me and telling me, well, what about big tech this, big tech that, the algorithm? Don't you think they should do something and everything? And I just laughed at him. And I'm like, well, what about responsible parenting, Bob? Yeah, I think the algorithm has, some sort of malfunction. Actually, it's probably working the way it's supposed to because it likes the negative emotions, and everybody, human nature is to feed on negative emotions. But if we're responsible parents and sit at our dinner tables with our kids and tell them to do these things, so I took it from a both sides approach. Politics is the only place that I would tell MSPs to be careful. Other than that, expose your life for real, and you might think like privacy, I'm a private person, all those things, but that's not, if it's a conversation you would have with somebody in person, it's a conversation that's okay to put online. I'm not talking like with your spouse behind closed doors, that kind of in person, but I'm talking with a neighbor, that you're just talking about, like I said, the shootings, hold your kids a little tighter today, man. Don't be afraid to put that stuff out there. And if we're talking about social media and personal branding, this is the time to jump in on this because going forward, when I talk to, this comes full circle, right? Going forward, when I talk about the right way to sell as an MSP right now is not going in person and sitting down with that individual because that's too freaking slow, guys. It's way too freaking slow. The way that you want to do this is like Brian and Mary Hamilton did it, where you bring 75 people in a room and talk to them at the same time. Generate 15 leads out of that, which 5 of them are going to close. It's just simple math when you have your close ratios down. It's freaking phenomenal. And this is where things are going to go. So if you want to just putter along as an MSP, I'm going to be direct on this. I hope you don't mind that. And if you do, I'm sorry. Well, not sorry. But MSPs need to be out front and doing these things and evolving right now because this is where the space is going. It's becoming hotter. And the reason I say it's becoming hotter is because there's other ways to reach people now. The old ways of just going door to door or having one meeting at a time, they're done. They're absolutely freaking done. I don't even think that in-person meetings should be your first meeting anymore, especially after these things. I started doing that years ago because I was still involved in sales, is doing Zoom meetings with people as the very first meeting just to see if it's even worth your time. But instead of doing Zoom meetings one-on-one, what if you had like a 1 to 20 doing a virtual event? If you're nervous about public speaking, as you call it, the only nervousness is that you actually might make a freaking sale. Because your brain, your subconscious goes all the way to the end of that thinking, what do you need to do to accomplish this? It's like, well, what if I go in there and I talk to 20 people and 5 of them actually close? Holy hell, how am I going to handle that work? It's not really the fear of public speaking that MSPs will have. It's actually the fear of scalability. So when I say that the space is getting hotter, that's what MSPs are facing right now. Because if you're not large, or if you don't have the resources, if you don't have the foundation in place, you're not going to be able to handle the amount of workload that's going to come your way. We saw all the scrambling and people making bank, right, in the MSP space when the pandemic hit with all this remote work. And I saw across all these Reddit threads. I monitor Reddit. I don't really like Reddit, but I monitor it. They're like, oh yeah, I'm making more money than I have in years. This is amazing. And guess what happened 4 months later? They're back into like poverty again. And it's horrible because I feel so bad for these MSPs, but it wasn't sustainable because they couldn't handle that workload and grab onto it and keep going up because it kept going in their own pockets. I love backtracking to when I first started this and said that, hey, the very first thing that I did was invest back in my business and hired people to be able to take things off of my plate. So I wasn't the one that was answering service desk calls. I wasn't the one that was, always having to handle billing issues or whatever the thing would be when it came up, because this space is just going to continue to get hotter. Businesses, there's no shortage of them, even over the last couple of years. And I'm predicting right now that there will be 1/3 less MSPs now. So that 143,000 mark, there will be 1/3 less in 5 years. Because of 2 reasons. 1, for consolidation, and 2, because the smaller ones will not be able to service their customers the way they should be able to. And it's because of this stagnation that they have in themselves and this indecision to be able to change with the times. to be able to sell in different ways, to be able to go and mass market to people rather than one-on-one. Still have the one-on-one, but be 1-on-20 in person, be 1-on-75 in person. Imagine what your life could be like, not taking home $80K a year, but actually taking home $800K a year.
It's a stark difference. Talk a little, if you can, talk a little bit about the amount of consolidation that you see out there, because you're out there buying MSPs. You know that it's coming together, and in order to scale and in order to service customers, you got to be bigger. How can you what can you say to an MSP that's out there right now that's really small, that might be thinking, wow, I can't really do a lot of the things that they can do. What does that person need to do, and what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, thank you for that. There's two ways to go about it. And I think 11 years ago when I started to reach out, it was a different world, guys. It was a much different world. Cybersecurity really wasn't even a thing. And
Britney Spears was still a singer.
She was, yeah, no kidding. You brought up Britney, which, by the way, she got the, whatever was her custody or whatever revoked, like about 6 months ago or something. She's a free woman again. Yay, Britney. With the consolidation in the space, and this is happening at all levels. I mean, we just saw Kaseya, put in their offer to buy Datto, which is actually interesting. I was there when Fred was talking in Boca Raton, and he was describing different things, and it emulated what's going across the board, right? Because Datto, as a whole, he goes, I'm just going to say it. We bought Datto because Datto was cheap. This was Fred when he was talking on stage. And these are the things that I'm thinking. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. That's a lot of balls. I love who this guy is, right? Because he's just putting out there his truth. And he's like, I don't get it, because they're a public company. That means their financials are out there. You can actually go and look, and their profit is like next to nothing. They're running a single-digit EBITDA, which is why they were cheap, which is why it was good for us to go in and buy them, because now we can add efficiencies and we can scale the company even more. He's like, it was just a good match, but we bought them because they were cheap. And as I look at the space right now, I've talked about MSP owners taking home about $80K a year, right? Which, by the way, is just slightly higher than the SBA's, the Small Business Administration's average take-home pay for any small business owner that exists in the whole United States. I think it's at like $63,000 right now. It holds true in the MSP space too. It's right around that same range. Obviously it's like 78, 79,000 for MSPs. Now, what I'm seeing is very similar circumstances to Datto. And don't get me wrong, because I think Datto as a company, the technology is actually pretty great. I'll come out there and say it. We use it. It's been in use across the board. Obviously, we're acquiring MSPs that are using it too. And as a company, they're good. But you see this with MSPs also, is that their EBITDA is low. At least the smaller ones, it's really, really low, because there's not a lot that's being used to reinvest back in the business. The mindset that I see smaller MSPs are just as simple as, I want to pay my mortgage. And this is why, you guys, this is really what displays my heart wide open here, because I know that I'll find my 50 to 75 MSPs over the next 2 years, because it's going to be a good synergy between us. Like there's a big one that's coming up here that's going to close within the next quarter. And I'll have more to say about that in a little bit, but I'm a public company now, so there's not a lot that I can disclose publicly until it happens either. The smaller ones that I see, I'm still going to find 50 to 75. I'm not worried about that. But guys, I want the 143,000 to just make more money, to have a better quality of life. So when I see an MSP come across the board, I'm like, guys, man, you're not really worth that much as a business, because your EBITDA is only 8%. You may be taking in $1 million, but no joke, you're only taking home $80,000. You've got $1 million in revenue, but why are you only making as an owner $80,000? Well, I've got all my people that I got to pay. I've got these other things, and it's like you're running inefficient. And even worse that I see is that most of the pricing is way out of whack. And this is why it's difficult to actually encourage MSPs that are under $1 million, which, by the way, is like 93% of them. Across the United States. I know, I was there. The first 5 years, I went from 0 to 500K in revenue. Reach out. The next 5 years went from 500K to 5 million. And that's because I had to shift how I looked at these things and shift my perspective and understand that the only way to do this is to actually provide more value. And, this is like a little trick into a little seed, I guess. This is probably going to publish after my LinkedIn training, but the only way to raise prices and to charge more is to provide more value. Who the hell cares about inflation and everything else? Don't just raise your prices just to raise your prices, and don't go back to your existing clients and saying we're bumping up prices without adding more value to it. That's like business suicide. Look at AT&T and Verizon right now. They're doing that, right? And then there's T-Mobile that's saying, hey, you know what? Screw those other guys. We're going to give you our top plan for the same price as the middle tier plan. We're just going to keep our prices the same and actually take it down for most everybody else. They're gaining so many more customers that way. And they're focusing on efficiencies and profitability, and consolidation of their physical resources in order to increase their profits. But to do that, they're generating more cash flow in the near term by pulling all these other customers over. That's what MSPs have to do. I've done this time and time again to where I've pulled customers from other MSPs in the area, in the Chicago area, who were paying less. And now they're paying twice as much with Reach Out because I'm giving them more value. This could be adding 2 more products to your stack. This could be coming to a ChannelPro event and looking at one of the vendors and walking in and saying, hey, I'm going to add something to my stack today because I can add something and then charge more tomorrow. I can make more money and my clients can have more value and be more predictable, reliable, and secure. It's a win-win. Small MSPs are going to have a tough time because if you look at Reach Out's stack, and we just went through this morning with our board of directors, they were like, oh my God. I miscounted. I used to say 27 from stage. I don't know if you remember that at ChannelPro events. I would say, hey, this is Reach Out Stack 27 of them or whatever. We have 34, dude. 34 items, with different tools and processes and platforms that are in our cybersecurity stack. And the only way to provide something like that actually does work and protects all these attack vectors from hackers is to actually charge more money. And I don't care what area of the country that you're in, you can match this to it. Because there's a training I did on pricing and there's different rule sets, but you should be at least at 70 points in gross margin on every single thing that you do. After all of your tools are paid for, after your people that go into servicing that client are paid for, even what you should pay yourself. And if you're a Lone Ranger right now, take what you would pay someone else and calculate that into your cost of goods sold and see if you're still at 70 points of margin. Most won't be, because there's no MSP out there that should be charging less than $199 a seat. Reach Out charges $499 a seat. And that's literally for everything. That's the cyber and the IT management. But look, we're providing 34 layers to our clients and stuff doesn't go wrong. And when it does, we've had clients get breached because it's not a magic wand, but when it does go wrong, the longest amount of time that we've ever taken in incident response to get them completely, fully operational again is 2 hours. That's it. And that's because we charge so much, and because we charge so much, we can deliver all these different tool sets. Because we can deliver all these different tool sets, it's actually a service that works.
There probably is no bigger, more important issue in the industry right now for MSPs than the sort of larger issue, the master issue that you're addressing there, which is just that that consolidation you were talking about is happening. So there has never been more demand for managed services. That is pulling a lot of money into the market. From private equity firms, from already established large companies like yours that are looking to acquire and to grow. And what that means for the smaller MSP is, like it or not, you're going to be competing with companies that can do a whole lot more than you are doing right now. And you need to, at a minimum, you need to have a strategy for competing with those companies if you intend to stay independent and small. And if you want to get bigger, then you need a plan for how to get bigger and how you're going to do that, and do that relatively rapidly. Because I don't know what the timeline looks like, but there are going to be probably fewer MSPs out there, 2 to 3 years down the road. So this is coming at everybody in our audience, whether they like it or not, whether they're ready for it or not, and they need to have a strategy for how they're going to do that. Because it will get harder and harder to compete the old school way over time.
You got it, Rich. And I want to leave everybody on a high note too, because I mean, what we're saying is just, the straight truth. Yeah, but there are ways to do this. One of the ways is to maybe join up with someone like Reach Out. Now, we're the only public one, that exists. Private equity, by the way, is not going to buy you if you're doing under $5 million in revenue. They just won't, because you need to have at least $1 million in EBITDA, $1 million in profit in order for private equity to actually even consider you. So if you're smaller than that, the only one that you're attractive to is somebody like me from an acquisition perspective. But if you're somebody that doesn't and you want to go for it, there's ways to do this. And the best tip that I have for any MSP, and really any business period, no joke, any business period, is to add some kind of new offering or some kind of feature or value to your services, to your products, at least 4 times a year. That's once a quarter. So as you're going to ChannelPro events and you see these vendors that are around there, scope out someone that you could add, a service that you could add to your stack, to your service, to your product that you're offering this quarter. And then you do the same thing next quarter. Reach Out, we evaluate maybe 10 or 12 a year, and that's how we got up to 34. So we've been at this. It was just like we were talking about with personal brand, right? And going from all the 400 followers to whatever it is on LinkedIn right now or Instagram and all that. It takes time. And today is the day to start that, because if you can add 4 services a year, in 3 years, you're going to have 12 services you didn't offer before. And you at least have that. And if you think you can accelerate that pace, that's cool. But you can't just try something out and then just skip it, right? 3 months later. This also means that you have to commit too. And I think some vendors are getting on board with this to where they're allowing no minimums, a very small minimum at this point. Even if they have contracts, who cares? I mean, I started this 10 years ago when all the vendors in the MSP space required long-term contracts, 3 years worth and all this stuff. But I didn't care. I think this is what I spoke on at the last ChannelPro event, right? It's like, who cares? Commit first and then take massive action. So if you see something there like, oh, you got to sign a 3-year contract and you're like, oh my God, I know this is going to provide so much value. I want to do this quarter. You have to sign up for 300 licenses minimum, whatever it is, but you only have 50 people you're servicing right now as a small MSP. Who cares? That just means that over the next quarter, during your ramp up period, you just have to sell 250. That's all, right? Think about when that's done and how much more money you're going to be making and how many more clients you have when you sell those 250, all because you made the decision now, today, in the moment, to actually commit first and then take the massive action.
Any MSP, any channel pro out there who has that kind of confidence, in themselves and in their ability to keep growing the business.
That's all I've got today, guys. You got questions?
No, that's probably a good place to wrap up. So, Rick, let's go ahead and sign off for our audience here. I'm sure you've turned some heads. I'm sure you've gotten some attention with some of the things that you've said there.
People either love me or hate me, man.
Well, for those in either camp who want to reach out to you and connect with you and either yell at you or do business with you, where can they go? How can they find you?
The best place you can, for real, text me at 312-535-8520. Or you can come follow me and connect with me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best platform for MSPs. If you want to see some more fun content like there was today, that would be Instagram. But text me, LinkedIn, Instagram. Easy place to start all those is whoisrickjordan.com.
Awesome. And for those who want to check out the ChannelPro Weekly Podcast or the ChannelPro Network itself, so the website's channelpronetwork.com. Go there each and every day. If you want to subscribe to the ChannelPro Weekly Podcast, like Rich said earlier on, we're everywhere podcasts are. We're also on YouTube if you like to watch. It's a great show. It's got lots of good information to help keep you on top of what's going on. We have some of the most awesome interviews of any show out there, including great awesome guests like Mr. Rick Jordan here. So come and check us out.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for being on All In too. Have a blessed day.